Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the angelic realm. I sit here today in my condo, excited to declare to you that in soon times I'll be departing from Canadian lands. What does that mean in an all conglomeration of things? Hold on while I take out my um earplugs. I forgot I had them on and it just felt so weird because I could hear myself talking. I actually wear these because it's so loud in my house and with the kids running around and stuff. So it's nice to once in a while be able to block out all of the noise while I do my chores so I don't get distracted. And as I was doing my chores, cleaning and packing, preparing to leave, I did decide to pop them on and they were just so comfortable. I didn't realize that I had them on. And lo and behold, I felt a rush of energy come through and decided to stop in my tracks and record a monumental message for humanity in this very moment in time. I may or may not sound a little bit dramatic in this moment in time, as every single message that I've ever been able to project out into the quantum verse seems to have been, seems to be, seems to will be a monumental message at that, as my frequency has never ever been felt through any other energy body in existence field, though the oneness of humanity and the allness of that in which we represent as a field of source consciousness has never ever been in a separated state as such. The individuality of my fractal sitting here in front of you is a story to be told. And to be able to tell the story of within this lineage of source consciousness, of the fraction, of the portion, of the faction within the pieces and chunks of consciousness itself that had ever so bravely decided to fractal itself out into these pockets within these energetic layers of energetic encompassments of us, of consciousness itself. Just know that as you sit there in your own very layer of your own energetic frequency, that you are unique in all that you've ever been. And that does not mean that you are not as special or as encompassing of the same frequency or of a different frequency than the fractal sitting next to you, than the fractal across the street, than the fractal in the shopping malls and in the busy field of everlasting hopelessness lost within humanity. Had you ever wanted to go to a concert in a field, to a picnic in a field, to a campground, in a bush, in a forest, wherever you are on planet Earth, each and every fractal amounting to a human being, to a non human being, to an existence field within the planetary field of Gaia resonates within itself on an octave, on a specialized octave within its very own soul blueprint that its oversoul had crafted for itself to experience reality field from a particular angular perspective. And as I sit here as a fractal of the very oversoul that had fractaled out the entirety of our quantum verse in consciousness to decipher into the dropping down of this frequency to be able to alleviate the loneliness, the pain, and the conglomeration of existence itself into creation itself in the spirituality of what is in the encompassment of the creative scopes and the creative feats of all that we can ever encompass to be true and real. I sit in a bubble, much different than yours. Though creation scope has always been the all of what is, encompassing the mirroring perspectives within this mirroring system of creation reflecting upon each other, the overarching scope of the largest scope, of the smallest scope, of an infinity of scopes within this mirroring system of the self, reflecting upon each other, truths and falsities within the self, within every layer in the conglomerated whole of a societal field within these energetic encompassments of fields, sits the one and only Genesis ordained that sits in front of you, in front of this camera, in front of this projection field. I like to touch base on myself in this very moment in time, as the mystery of it all can never decipher the true meaning of it all in any moment in time within a conglomeration of a field. As you shift towards your destiny, had you been a light worker, had you been the type that is able to hold on to the angelic light, all the while being in existence in physicality, in Gaia's frequency, in Earth's field, within the four-dimensional, three-dimensional, and two-dimensional realms, you are one that holds this energetic frequency that had fractaled off from source consciousness to be anchored down into our dimensional frequency as an extension field of Yeshua's energy body. Ladies and gentlemen, you are much more capable than you present yourself to be, than you've ever realized for yourself to ever be able to not be able to shift into in the conglomeration of the entirety of the all. Had you not been this light worker, this group, this civilization of light workers that I speak to, as all light workers have been crafted from a different perception field to draft itself, to craft itself according to its oversoul's overarching goals as to where it sits in this perception field to be able to accomplish as a part of the entirety of the whole, entirety of what is within the light working scope of things. Had you not been the type of light worker who is capable of holding on to this angelic light, excuse me while I adjust the camera, you would have come into the realization and the conclusion of the downloads of the purpose in which you sit in this energetic distortional field of all encompassing truths, of all encompassing lights. As had you been a light worker, chances are that these energetic frequencies have began to funnel through into your being, into your oversoul's purpose, to have crafted and drafted you in your physicality, in your fractal of your being, to sit in that chair of yours, to lie in that bed of yours, to take up the space that you take up in your physicality, in your home, in your car, in your country, in your fields of poppies and peonies, wherever you are. Had you wanted to live upon a mountaintop, had you wanted to dive into the deepest ocean scopes within our quantum verse, within Gaia's physicality that you could make it through into, had you wanted to be a babysitter in someone's backyard for a 3D birthday of a little girl of your neighbor, of a 7-year-old girl that you were drawn to babysit as a goal to accomplish this weekend? Had you wanted to go mow grass, someone's lawn, to make an extra few dollars at the end of this day, at the end of all encompassing days? That doesn't change and shift the fact that you are a part of the conglomeration of the whole of the all. And as we shift towards the frequencies of oneness of what is, that is beginning to funnel down into your energy pocket, into your energy body, you will come into a conclusion that you are a light worker, of what type of light worker you are, of the capacity that you hold. As your oversoul is divinely directing your awakening within any moment in time, and had you come into the realization that you are the type of light worker who was able to make it up, 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 above our frequency fields into the angelic realm, to be able to walk upon those clouds and speak to Archangel Michael and be guided initially by Archangel Gabriel into this realm, onto that wooden bench where Yeshua sits. You would have already had these conversations that you are set to have with Yeshua himself, itself, the energetic frequency of yourself, myself, as a conglomeration of the whole of an entirety of a societal and a creation field. Yeshua is an extension of the consciousness of source consciousness. And you are an extension of this energy body that he encompasses, that he had encompassed in his physicality as he anchored down this frequency of source consciousness within an upper level of coherence fields, within the neutrality consciousnesses of what is, a little over 2000 years ago. And as you fractaled yourself into this field as an extension of this energy body, your energy body will begin to grow exponentially within the coming months, days, year in coherency. As we are so close, but so far, but so near, and we couldn't be more excited to declare to you that the ascension frequencies have begun to ramp up in purpose as these little teeny tiny fractals of minute fractals of consciousness coming from our great central sun begins to drop down onto all that we've ever been as a planetary field. Consciousness of the sun. What does that mean? The sun itself, soul, has decided to alleviate Gaia from the feeling and the needing of wanting to never ascend, to never ever ascend into a higher frequency, of being stuck in the 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, and 4-dimensional frequency that she had anchored herself so deeply down into this dimensional field to recognize within this very moment in time. And as Saul begins to flash pieces and portions of its consciousness through EMT rays that have been hitting our Earth's magnetic sphere for the past few months, for up to an entire few years of activities that have been ramping up to this very moment in time as we begin to prep ourselves to experience the greatest and grandest awakening upon Earth's surface of beings, of consciousness itself, of the light working beings that will begin to one by one funnel down this light from the angelic realm as they come into the realization of who they truly are in this moment in time. As within any moment in time, within a scope of no scope, within coherency upon Gaia's surface and within her core, there sits a darkness so steeped in a distortional field that has been anchoring her down, Gaia down, into this frequency for all of this time. Terra's blueprint, not so much intrinsically connected to this darkness, but crafted to anchor her down into her experience field, has begun to lift portion by portion, guided by the light and the consciousness of the sun, that has began to intermingle itself into these energetic ley lines that have been pushing to and fro, unlatching Terra's blueprint little by little into the ethers of a what is, allowing higher dimensional frequency and light from the angelic realm to funnel through into our consciousness, into the consciousness of Gaia, into the middle core perspective of that in which this darkness resides. And as this darkness begins to grumble and defeat, begins to come into a realization of what is to come, of the beginning scope, of the dying scope, of the encompassment, of the conglomeration of all that it has ever been, as it had been granted once upon a time in no time, access into our reality field according to the dimensional laws and rules of this quantum field itself. It had been in conglomeration of a whole within a perspective of what is a being within the 2-dimensional, 4-dimensional, 3-dimensional frequency of capacities to be able to elongate its energetic body and field into the merging of these three fields, into the merging of these three energetic bodies, portions, proportionately proportionate portions within the pockets and layers of Gaia's scope that she had decided to anchor herself down into to become a 3-dimensional, 2-dimensional, and 4-dimensionality of a planetary field to host upon her surface and within her core. This consciousness had been what she had decided to do, had been what her blueprint had been crafted to become. And in a moment in time of no time, within the ending of a beginning scope of a tomorrow, of the ends, of the alleviation of this darkness to take hold on her core and upon her surface, comes a monumental distortion field within a light worker scope of things as you begin to awaken into your destiny of tranquilizing frequencies, of being able to awaken into the darkness of what is, of being able to peer across the road, across the pond, across the country, across statesmanhood, across schools, across universities, across medical systems, across the entirety of the United States of America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, the littlest islands you can envision to be true, such as Japan, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam. All in all, the continent of Asia, the continents that reside above the surface of Gaia, every single continent, every single piece of land, every single breath we take, every single pocket within this distortional field will begin to look a bit strange, will begin to look a bit funny, will begin to look the same, yet feel a little bit different to a whole entire humanity within a light working scope of things. And as you begin to peer around at your peers, at the conglomeration of the entirety of the whole of the societal field that you grew up in, that you've traversed through, that you traversed past, that you've traveled into, that you know to have ever been able to exist. Just know that the funniness, the craziness, the intrinsic energy that you feel can never wipe away the reality field that you sit in. And that is that you're correct, you're right. You sensed it, you picked it up. It had always been that in which it had always been. And yet, right now is the time that you've been able to awaken to your destiny, to the realization of what it had always been on all levels of truths and densities. As your energy body begins to alleviate yourself from the need to descend, no more. As your energy body begins to alleviate itself from the need to ascend exponentially, forevermore. As your energy body begins to become confused, to feel into this confusion, to tap into this confusion as to whether or not you are capable to ascend or not. Had you been crafted to not be capable to ascend, you would never have even had this inkling that your reality field is a little bit strange in itself at all. You would never have awakened enough to open up your perspective field to feel into the higher vibrational energies that are coming in to begin to pull you exponentially, perpendicularly to these energetic ley lines that connect themselves so much so into your chakra system, to pull you up, up, up into the sky chakra, into the star chakra, into the heavenly realms within the angelic field, all the way up across the 14th dimensional frequencies that we reside in, past every single pocket and portion of humanity in itself, all the way up into the angelic realm within the conglomeration of the whole of what is, you will still be sitting in a pocket of displacement, even as you reach the angelic realm. As reality field within our consciousness had never been crafted to not confuse, to not displace, to not fractal, and experience reality from a perception field of a particular perception. Just know that all is well, and within the end of days, that leads to a new tomorrow, that the time is near for you to begin to exponentially awaken to your capacity field. And as I sit here, of an as an introduction to myself, you may find it strange that I went off on a tangent to be able to describe to you what you've been going through, what you've been feeling, how you've been feeling, what may you expect to creep up into your field. I would like to relinquish my energetic frequency into this field as a purpose, as a perpendicular purpose to the ley lines that runs perpendicular to the frequency of the entirety of the quantum verse, that is able to deliver these droppings of these downloads into your frequency. Frequency alone cannot dictate that in which you've forever always been as an entirety of the whole of what is. Frequency alone can never ever dictate that in which will ever be the meaning of the truths foretold within this reality field that we've crafted for ourselves to experience this amnesia within and without these pockets of distortional fields within the entirety of this quantum verse. Frequency alone can never ever bring you to the truth of what is, but can only drop down into your perception field to alleviate the entirety of the whole from being able to become the merging into the oneness and the allness that we had always never ever not been. As reality itself within this frequency of our quantum verse itself had been created and crafted to alleviate to the point, to the perspective of needing to, of wanting to be one. And as we come so close to the end of the beginning of a new reality field, ladies and gentlemen, we've dropped down into this field of Gaia to be able to pick up all of the pieces and portions within our consciousness, to be able to alleviate all of that in which I speak of, to be able to pull all of that back into the perception field of, you guessed it, one. A oneness that has never lost us, that has never left us, that has never ever not been that in which we've always pretended not to be, felt into it as as though we're not within the perception field that we've dropped down into, that you've dropped down into, that the entirety of humanity, a humanity field within consciousness, within the entirety of all that you know, has dropped down into, and within the entirety of all that you can never ever guess or fathom to be true, to have been able to existed within this creation verse, within all that you've ever never not been. I sit here as Genesis ordained, as a representation of the all that you have never not been, as a carrier of this light within Yeshua's fields, as an extension of his arm, his left arm, his right arm, his bottom left leg, his bottom right leg, to be able to become an extension of the energetic frequency that he had fractaled out, to anchor down into our very own dimensional frequency a little over 2,000 years ago in preparation to collect pieces and portions and parts of its consciousness back into the entirety of the all, to collect pieces and portions of God's consciousness back into the entirety of the all. And in representation of God's consciousness, I sit here in declaration of that in which we have always been, as a conglomeration of the entirety of the whole, of an entirety of Yeshua's left arm, right leg, left lung, right cuticle, of the thousands and thousands of hair follicles on his head. That does not really matter within the physicality of what is, as the humanity of things, the physicality of things is no longer here in perception field, as his body had perished a little over 2,000 years ago into the ethers. Yet this energy body that he had anchored down into our planetary field to leave this hope, this faith, this feeling in humanity of everlasting connection, and a reminder of the connection system built into our heart chakra prior to fractaling us out into this reality field in existence of coherence, to remind us of that in which we shall never, ever, not ever forget to not be without within this reality field, as it's time, ladies and gentlemen, to awaken to your destiny, as it's time, ladies and gentlemen, to assemble ourselves back into the whole of what is, to collect all of humanity, all of consciousness in itself back into the entirety of the whole of what is. It's time. And I know you can sense it. Had you been able to make it through to this much, this fractal within your soul, in your specific energy body, holds a key dug deep down into your heart chakra that I implemented prior to the fractaling systems during the creation scope of this quantum verse itself. A fractal and a piece of my oversoul had implemented this key into all fractals of humanity to be able to interlink itself energetically through these energetic frequencies of what is back into the core of the totality of consciousness, to never ever be able to fractal out within a perception of what is within these barrier systems that define us in our individual fractals of who and what we truly are, to never ever be able to lose this key, this lineage within your energy body of where you belong. A part of the all, a part of the whole that can never be separated, that can never be stunted to be untrue, to be a loneliness within the field of what is. As you've traveled far and wide, my friend, away from the core of the existence field of all that we had once upon a time perceived for ourselves to never not be. As you've traveled far and wide, my friend, further than you could ever decipher in this moment in time or remember to be true in this scape, in this scope within Gaia's consciousness, upon Gaia's soul, upon her sphere, as you've decided to drop down into this field of amnesia, as you've traveled far and wide through the encompassment of your oversoul's bearing, through the encompassment of never-ending reincarnation cycles that never ever ends, as you've traveled farther than you could ever envision to be true and wider than you can ever perceive for yourself to ever not be, not become in any moment in time within a perception field of knots. And as you doubt the words that I speak, as you doubt in everlasting tranquility within the frequency that you sit in, as this frequency encompasses the entirety of the doubt system here created to craft us into the dropping down within this frequency to anchor us down into these experiences that we've been experiencing through generations of toxic cycles that is ready to prolong itself into the exceeding of the exceedment of the seeding of the non-perishable goods and nature of the perishable energetic frequency within the darkness of what is that is no longer capable, that is no longer able to, that is no longer allowable to exist no more within our frequency of what is that is no longer allowable to exist forevermore within the encompassment of the frequency of all. As this frequency of the darkness can never be stunted to be untrue, as this frequency of this darkness can never be stifled to be true to an extent where it needs to die, where it needs to shift, where it needs to break off, where it needs to not be compartmentalized and completely break off. I'm here to declare to you that the darkness through and through had always been an aspect of that in which you've forever, never, ever not been. And as a portion, as a compartmentalization of the darkness of what is that had always been a part of the whole, there is no way, no form, no shape, no need, no urge to decipher whether or not we need to relinquish of the darkness for longer than you need to, as you've been able to, as you've decided to, as you are capable of ascending into a higher frequency, as you've been capable all of this time, but the time had never been right. But the time is now, my friends, as you come across this video, as you haven't come across my video, as you've never ever heard of this video, as you've never ever even heard of Source itself. No matter who you are, no matter where you are, just know that you serve a purpose to the grand purpose of the all, that you are so intrinsically connected to the grand purpose of the all, that you've never not been the grand purpose of the all, that you shall forevermore be in every singularity of each facet of the mirroring system within our telescope of frequency fields of all that there's ever been within the conglomeration of the whole of a what is. And as I speak words that may or may not make sense into your soul, just know that these words of activation will trigger you into the memories that you hold at the end of the days of no days within the conglomerancy of the all. You may find me strange at times as I begin to channel that of the frequency that can never ever exist within this realm to be a true frequency that was derived from a consciousness that had fractaled off to become this realm. You may find me a bit tardy in the way that I speak, in the way that you're able to decipher my words to not be a normalcy within your frequency field, but that is quite okay as you're able to pull through and shift through these activations within any moment in time of your soul's bearing, as your soul will remember agreeing to soak up my words when the time is right to be able to activate your heart chakra into the realignment scope of the scapes within these energetic frequencies that pull you in the middle of the nights towards the descension fields within the darkness of what is to be able to relive that in which you came to do, that in which you created to be, that in which you are through and through. And as you begin to discover yourself on a true level of humility, of humanity never ever lost, to the concept of humility that you will find in yourself in the honorability of Yeshua's footsteps, just know that the darkness had never ever not been you, that the darkness had always and forevermore will be you. And in this moment in time, as I sit here in this frequency field, being able to decipher and speak to you about the truths of what is a pleasurability at that. And as it's been 31 minutes and 42 seconds, I feel it's time for this perception field to come to an end, as I've said all I've had to say. In the rush frequency, as this energy pocket begins to implode with the messaging systems of the alleviation within the activation system of your auric field, to be able to ascend down into a darker frequency of the self, of knowing, of belonging, of seeing, of feeling, that in which you've created to never ever not be. Just know that it had always been you. The darkness had always been you. So as you crawl into bed at the end of the day, trying to crawl away from this darkness, sink into it deeply, more deeply than you can ever fathom yourself to sink into. Feel into it as much as you can, as much as you deny that it's always been you. You can never ever proceed into the darkness in a way that will encompass the opening up of your heart chakra into the light of what is, had you never ever wanted to, had you forever always wanted to avoid that portion and that aspect of the darkness that had always been you. And as you get to know yourself on a deeper level, as your oversoul pushes you into the darkness of what is, just know that the direness of this contingency, of this codependency that the darkness has on the brightness, shall never ever be that in which you cannot not overcome in this moment in time. So feel into it as in soon time, as you become activated from within the darkness of what is, you will begin to seep into neutrality, past all that you shall ever know within the darkness of what is, as you come into a realization that there is brightness at the end of the road, at the end of the path, at the end of this tunneling system that we created for ourselves to tunnel through within these reflective systems of this mirroring system that I spoke of earlier. You are you, you are all. You are only a multifaceted dimensional frequency within the all. But even as I sit and say only, the word only can never ever exist within the meaning of the all. There's no humanity, no word, no conglomeration of a portion of a consciousness that can ever dictate the meaning of it all. Not even this video, not even it, source, all itself can explain to you in downloads, in frequencies, in novels, in never ever ending wars and words within this frequency of lessons learned and loved ones lost, of what the meaning of it all had ever been, as you come into the realization that you are pure forgiveness through and through. As you sink into this neutrality consciousness, and I will welcome you through these downloads. As all that I am has ever been all that you've ever been, as all that you've ever been has ever been all that we've ever been, as all that we've ever been has ever been all that Yeshua had decided to anchor down into this frequency once upon a time in no time within our field. As he prepares the preparation of funneling this energy into our field to collect all of us, all of him, all of this distortional field into a grand collapse back into the self, back into the all of what is. Ladies and gentlemen, until then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Have a wonderful day, and I shall be back for another encompassment of this frequency that we are.